Advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. We've got Hank on the line. He called a while ago to get in and get on hold and get ready for the start of the show. So let's go to Texas and talk to Hank. You're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey, thank you for taking my call. Listening to you on podcasts for a long time since we don't get you here in our local market. Love the show. What I've got is a 2004 Chevy Suburban with the 5.3 Flex. Fuel on it has about 235,000 miles. A couple of years ago, I had a transmission work done on it. They had them go ahead and do the rear main seal because it was starting to leak, and they also did a crankshaft position sensor on it because of an oil leak. When I got the car back from them, it kind of had a crank, no start situation, but it's intermittent. And I've had this going on for about 3 years. Took it back to the shop, asked them to reprogram, do the relearn on the crankshaft position sensor. They were like, oh, no, it's your fuel pump. The car's got a lot of mileage on it. I put a fuel pressure tester on it. It's got 40 pounds when it's running. It had about 50 when you would turn it off, and it would hold pressure. Over the 3 years, it's maybe about 25% of the time I start it and I can't find a pattern. Sometimes I'll go out in the morning. It's got the first time, it'll crank but won't start. Turn the key back, turn it back on, and start. And then I can drive it around, get in it again later in the day, and it may or may not start. It's about 25% of the time, and I can't find a pattern to the no start on this. So since the 3 years, I had the fuel pump go out, and I replaced that with a fuel filter. A couple weeks ago, I checked it. It was losing pressure, so I replaced the fuel pressure regulator. I'm kind of at a loss for what it's doing. When it runs great. There's no issues with it. I'm kind of stuck at this point.
You know what Hank and I don't have in common?
What's that?
After listening to how detailed he was with all that he told us, he was ready for the show this morning. I wasn't.
Right. I saw Shannon in the hallway about 2 minutes before we started. He was ready to go, and then he was rushing in.
Something
there.
happened.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, Hank, you have got a hardware full of problems there.
Yep.
Nope, nobody's going to react to that bad joke.
I'm just waiting. I thought you had more. When we get a car that doesn't start like that, we just got to pick a place to start because it's not doing it all the time. On my own vehicle, I'm going to stick a fuel pressure gauge right on that rail, and I'm going to tape that gauge to my windshield so I can see it. And I'm probably going to drive it until it doesn't start in the morning. So I know what the pressure is when it's not starting. Because if I check it one day, maybe that's the time it's going to start, so the pressure's good. But then it doesn't start the next time, so I think, oh, well, the pressure was good when I checked it yesterday. It must be good. Maybe it's not on the day you're starting it. Like you found the fuel pressure regulator leaking, but that didn't seem to be the problem, although it was leaking. So I would start with that. I would get a pressure gauge. They do make them with a 4-foot cable on them, so you could screw them to that rail. And then you tape it down by the wiper there so you can see it. And just when it doesn't start, watch it and As long as you don't need your wipers, that's
That
good.
could be a problem.
Yeah. You turn the wipers on with that,
That
thing
40
on.
or 50 pounds that he had before, that's actually a little light, isn't it?
Well, that's running, he said.
Okay.
So,
all right.
when we first go to crank that thing up, it's going to be probably closer to 60 when you turn the key on and start cranking to fire it up. If it's a little low, it won't fire right away. It can take a little bit. But you might also have a crank sensor out. But I'm going to start probably, if there's no codes in it, when I scan it and the data looks good, I'm probably going to start with that fuel pressure gauge. And then after that, I'm going to try to find out, am I missing some spark? And you can get a spark tester that can be remote like that, so you can go back a little bit and watch and see if you've got spark on the coming to it. But on those vehicles, I've got one. We've got just hundreds of
there's
these
so
things
much
that come
experience
through
with
the
these
shop.
things.
Yeah, I would lean towards a fuel issue more than anything else. We just don't see with transmissions as many as we've put in, and water pumps and things where we're working on these vehicles front and rear and things, and the crank sensors behind the starter and the passenger side, as many of them that we've bumped and banged and stuff over the years working on them, we just don't see them fail. They're pretty tough. And then you got to do the cam crank relearn when you replace sensors, cam sensor or crank sensor, but typically it's not going to cause a no start issue. We might have an issue with some fuel mileage or some codes or things, but if there's no code in there for a cam crank relearn needed, it's usually just fine. Okay. I'm leaning more
it's
towards
not
fuel.
throwing any code.
Mm-hmm.
The only scanner that I have with it is a Bluetooth scanner that connects with my phone, and it doesn't give me any data until the car is running.
Oh, yeah.
A
few of those do that.
I was trying to see if I was getting RPM or whatever. So I have a question with if a fuel injector was leaking and it wasn't like, I guess it would be a consistent leak. Could that cause something like this, that it ends up being rich or something in one of the cylinders or a couple of the cylinders and it won't start because it's flooded?
For sure. So if
your
your pressure's going to drop down quite a bit, but it could drop down from, say you turn the key off and it's at 40, it could drop down to 10. So you think it's holding some pressure, but it's leaked down to that point and stopped. And the way you check that would be to start the engine, then shut it off so you got good pressure, and then pull all 8 of those injectors up with the rail out so you can see the bottom of them. And sometimes I'll throw a piece of white paper or something underneath them and just let it sit there for a couple hours and watch. And if you've got a couple of them that get wet and the rest don't, those injectors are bad. And with that many miles, you might have an injector going out. We don't see it very often on the...
But typically in that
5.3.
situation, it's still going to show you some action or try to fire, or it's going to do a little like a flooded type feel.
It's going to start on the cylinders that are not flooded. And also, if it's not starting, you could hold it to the floor when you crank it, and if it fires up quickly but runs a little rough and then smooths out, you let off the gas, then it's flooded.
Because when you put that throttle all the way down when you're trying to start it on that vehicle, it kills the fuel injectors so they don't pulse any fuel.
Yeah. I've actually tried that. There's no difference.
I think you got to catch this thing when it's sleeping.
Hank, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Gordy. You're on the Under the Hood Show, Gordy. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic.
Hey, I got a 2013 Honda Accord with a 2.4 liter, and when it's cold out, if you go out to start it, everything pretty much lights up. The check engine light comes on, the steering light comes on, and the brake light comes on, and also the TPMS flashes. So I pulled the codes out of it, and it's got a 85-01 VSA malfunction, 65-11 brake fluid switch malfunction, 83-11 PCM malfunction, and P0088 high pressure fuel pump fault.
With all that, it should also have a POS code.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what we did was we got a used PCM from you guys, and we put that in. We took it out to Honda and had it programmed, and went to pick it up. And of course, it had been sitting out in the cold, and same thing. When it's warm out, or if you have it in the shop overnight, fine.
Well, you can rule out the computer then,
It did the same
Well,
thing.
because that's just not a common problem on a Honda ever. And if you
No,
swap the
I've
computer,
never,
you're good.
I've never seen that. I work on a lot of Honda, and I've never had any issues like this.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you don't just have a single module or a sensor on this car that is shorting when it's cold, and it's affecting the whole system, so that it's making all the data corrupt in this system. We see it in cars. Take a General Motors car that comes in and it's got multiple body codes, it's got some engine codes and things like this, and we start to looking at it like in an Impala, and in the rear we find that there's water intrusion into the OnStar module, and it's causing a short. So there's voltage being strayed into the communication wires, and the car is doing all sorts of weird things. Hard start, codes and lights that are coming on that shouldn't be, should not connected to that anyways, like tire monitor and engine running, and the thing might even miss. And we finally find it, and we unplug the OnStar module in the back, which we find is corroded, and everything works except for that now, but everything else is working just fine, cold, hot, anything. So it could be something like that. But tracing these things down has become ever more challenging as cars get newer, because they layer upon layer on these systems now, and we have to find out which one is causing it. So what we typically do, we will look at data from all the systems and see if there's one system that nothing else can communicate with. So say we have codes in everything, but that like ABS brakes. If there's a code in every system that says can't communicate with ABS brakes, but the other systems are talking to each other, so there's at least some response, we go for the one that's got the worst communication, and we may just unplug that and then let it sit, start it up, see what we get. Try to narrow down which one is having the problem.
And of course, the low-hanging fruit too is just making sure that the power is solid, battery's solid at that point, grounds are solid. So I'm sure you checked that right away to make sure you had the right voltage when it's cold. That was probably your first thing you checked. But
I even went as far as to hook our scan tool up to it and check the coolant temp sensors. It's got two of them on that one, and make sure that they're reading properly, because I've had that where they will do some weird things if you got a bad coolant temp sensor.
For sure.
But everything's communicating. It's just driving me up a wall. That I don't want to take it back out to Honda. But
Those can get very expensive when you get into a situation like if you take a car like that into a dealership, they're going to use all the resources they have, but they're still bound by the only showing up when it's cold, not having any one clear path to diagnose, and that's going to get expensive because they're within their rights to say, all right, we're looking at your car, we're doing our best, we've got all this equipment and technology, we've got the manufacturer behind us, we've spent 2 hours on it, it's going to cost you, $300-400, whatever they get, and we haven't found it yet. Do you want to continue or not? And at that point you say, well, no, and then you get your bill, or you say yes, and then you get a bigger bill, and they still may not find it. It can be very tricky. I mean, we'll sometimes have cars, we may choose to take one on if we, I don't know, maybe we feel sorry for somebody or we want to help them out or, for whatever reason, we're bringing this car in when we normally may not if it's odd like this, but we tell them, don't call being in a hurry. It may sit here for 6 months as we work on it for an hour here, hour there, in between stuff, and try to get it to act up, because if it doesn't act up, we can't fix it. Now, if you don't want to do that, keep it. Well, then what do I do with the car? We don't care. It's your car. It's broken. Do you want it fixed or not? And it can be tricky. And sometimes we do that just for the challenge of it, but other times we just don't have the time. But it makes it very difficult for people now that have, if it's your only car and it's leaving you stranded at times.
The thing that you have to hope for in that situation is that just like you've got experience with this car and you haven't had this problem, there are people that are really into these cars that maybe up in the upper Midwest that if you got onto a certain forum or, a tech line or whatever, or maybe like I said at the dealer, they've had experience. There might be somebody that's, if they would raise their hand and say, you know what, we've seen this 5 times before. This is typically what it is. Would you like us to go down this path? Because we're pretty sure this is going to do it, but we don't know that. You got to find somebody who's had that experience. And this is one that it sounds like we haven't had that direct experience, but there's some generalities and things to work off, because that's where you got to find somebody that's really dyed in the wool on that kind of car.
Gordy, thanks very much for the call. Good luck with that. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Virginia and talk to John. You're on the Under the Hood Show. John, what can we do for you?
Well, I've got a problem child, a 1987 Buick Regal Grand National. It's the turbocharged intercooled motor. It's basically garage kept all the time under a cover, and it's eating up fuel pumps, the electric pump that's in the tank. I've had been through 2 within a year. Each pump, I only get about 50 miles on it. I get it home, get it in the garage, put the cover back on it, and when I'm ready to go again, it acts like it's not working. So I've replaced the tank. Like I said, I'm on my second fuel pump, sock sending unit. So I've gone through all the grounds. Engine department, I've done firewall, frame, the radiator cradle, checked the ground in the trunk. I've added the ground to the tank, which I know that's probably not doing me any good, but it made me feel better. Buick has a bypass, which is a gray line by the alternator, and I've tried plugging that in to no avail. I've added and now removed a bypass that's produced by Summit Point. And what I found out that the bypass relies on is a good 12 volts in your existing system in back of the car, and I'm not receiving that at all. What else have I done? I've done temporarily replaced the relay. The battery is charged and it's on a maintainer, and the car cranks fine, and it'll fire with carburetor cleaner, but that's just very limited in what I'm doing there. And I'm out of solutions other than maybe a suspect of the ECM, but I don't know. And so my 2 concerns are what's preventing me getting 12 volts at the pump in the back, and the second is what's causing the fuel pumps to actually burn up when the car's not even being driven.
Well, with that big of a problem, I'm pretty sure that the value of that car has dropped down to about $5,000, and I can take it off your hands.
Yeah, we'll send a hauler. You don't need to.
I'll
deal
be
with
out there this weekend.
I'll do it for 10.
This is too much,
Chris?
It's too much, John. You should just pass on it.
There's a line forming at the front door as you talk.
How many miles are on this one?
It's a high mileage car. It's 140,000, but the car is, again, bone stock. Has been very well maintained. Really the interior, everything is spotless on it. Paint job's probably at a number 8 out of 10. And it's got all stock wheels. It's stock everything. I've even got the original window sticker for it. So
That's fine.
it's kind of a cream puff high mileage.
Pump should not fail with a car not running. It just shouldn't. I can't see any reason why it would sitting there unless you've got some crazy mixture of fuel in the tank, like battery acid or something. It just shouldn't fail sitting. Now running, yes, it could if you've got the wrong voltage back there, if you've got a ground issue or a power supply issue where it's running at a poor voltage and burning up the brushes in that thing. That could do it, but just sitting and not running. If you put a brand new pump in and it runs today and you turn it off and it sits for 5 years with fuel in it, it should still work. That pump should still work. All these years that we've seen these cars using that style fuel pump in that body, I've just never
All the
had,
Monty SS's and Grand Nationals and
not had a fuel pump fail in one. I've had one that sat for 10 years that had a bad pump, but I have not had a regular customer with a failed pump. So I'm going to start by checking voltages at the pump, watch that thing as I'm driving with the meter and make sure it's got the correct voltage, battery voltage all the time. And if I don't, then I'm going to have to start checking down the line. Can't remember if that one uses the 2-speed pump or not. Do you remember, Shannon?
I don't think it does.
Because the ones with the 2-speed pump later years, if they're stuck in the high mode, they will burn
No,
the pump.
I think that's just a single-stage pump, I think, if
that's
I remember
that's what I thought, too.
Have you been using the AC Delco original pumps in there, or what have you been using?
That was the first pump. The first replacement pump that burned up was a Delco, and the second pump was a Napa.
Well, the car's black, by the way, if we're going to guess colors.
Oh, you
but
think?
that is something that has just got us stumped, too, as far as what you got to do. Check that voltage. We'll think about that a little bit during our break here, and maybe we'll talk back when we get after the break here. So,
And if he weren't in Virginia, you'd go help him. When you guys,
I'd have to see it at least.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150. Stay right there, John.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. Let's, before we get to our other stuff, let's go back to John quick. It was interesting watching you guys discuss this off air during the break.
Well,
John?
we weren't discussing raising the offer also to come
Right.
out there for the car.
Right.
I had 2 of these in high school. I wrecked one, and then I got out of the Grand National business after I wrecked it. And so I've always had a soft spot for these cars in my heart.
So describe John's problem again.
John has got a car that has been eating a couple fuel pumps and happened during storage, if we understand it correctly. Or
And we think it's the fuel pump going out because of the description. It's out. You put
and it's an
another one, it
87
goes.
Buick Grand National, 140,000 miles, nice clean car.
But it may not be unless you take the pump out and test it on the bench. You know, have you tested it on the bench once you've pulled it out? Have you applied power to it to see if it runs, or did you just take it out and put another one in?
It was taken out by a mechanic.
Okay.
The downside here is the garage that it's in is attached to the house, and so for me to drop a tank in that environment would
Yep.
get some fumes into the house. So.
Well, and they're a little tricky back there with the way they sit with the axle and all that stuff. So
here's a theory we talked about during the break.
So we've seen a few of these vehicles like this that use this type of electric system in it to power it. They have a relay that comes on for about 3 seconds when you turn the key on to prime it. And then when you start the car, the relay again engages and stays engaged. But the main source of the amperage comes from the oil pressure sending unit. When the pressure comes up, it closes 2 contacts and sustains that voltage to the pump. If that oil pressure sending unit has failed and it's not sustaining that, all the load is put on the fuel pump relay, making it extremely hot and wearing the contacts and lowering the amperage to that pump. And that can quickly burn out a pump or start burning out relays. So one thing you definitely want to check is that oil pressure sending unit is closing. If not, just throw one in it.
They're not that expensive.
I bet it's $25, and you unscrew it from the engine.
Who knows? It could be
screw the
50
new
for
one.
that one, but who cares at that
I mean,
point?
it's a cheap part, and all it does is it sends your signal to your gauge or your light, and then it closes the 2 heavy wires, close a contact to run this fuel pump. That would be worth replacing, because we've had, even in one of our own trucks, we had one with a failed one, and it was eating up fuel pump relays, and then it started eating up fuel pumps, and we're looking through it and like, hey, that thing is not closing like it should. And we replaced that oil pressure sending unit, and it was done. The truck went on till it died many years
for
later.
another reason.
Yeah, old age.
And real quick here, we're going to move on, but when you get to that vehicle, is the battery dead, or do you have a tender on it that's keeping it awake as far as the battery power?
I keep a tender on it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. That's one that we have a partner on the show, Berkeley One Classics, that insures the older classics like that, and that would be a perfect one if you don't have somebody that helps you out with that. They save you a lot of money and give you really good coverage on it, and you can still drive it.
You can drive it when it's nice out.
Yep.
John, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Let us know. Shannon's interested in seeing how this one turns out. 866-594-4150. If you subscribe to our YouTube feed and you join the Hoodie fan club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Cal Jones, who listens to our show and watches YouTube, and I said, hey, I'm going to pick him right off of YouTube there. Thank you. Congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute. They're your one-stop place for everything automotive, and now including airplane and power plant, airframe and power plant.
Mm-hmm.
The bird
A&P.
stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
And welding and machinists, motorcycles.
Can I be just an A or a P in aircrafts? Can I be just airframe or just power? Or do I have to be an A and P?
I've never run across that. I think you're doing both together, but you can specialize in one or the other. But I believe you're always going to be.
Because I'm
A&P.
ambitious, but not that ambitious.
Yeah, if you're more of an airframe guy, I mean, there's guys that you go to the shop. When you go to the FBOs, you're going to find the places that are going to be. This guy he's an engine guy, but no, he's not working on your ailerons. He's
Right,
just he's not doing your electronics. They're specialized, but they
Okay.
get a general, kind of like a doctor.
Sure.
A general surgeon is going to be a family practice doctor. Typically, he's trained in that, but that's not really his specialty. He's the surgeon.
I'm going to use this little segment here as an opportunity to give a shout out. I had somebody send me a note on Messenger. It was Walter Ports, and Walter used to live in Sioux Falls, and he's now, how I read this, he's now in the Charlotte area, and they had a young man that they took into their house to help while they were here in Sioux Falls that was in a tough spot in his life, and they've kind of guided and helped, and they just brought him to the NASCAR Institute for training, and they met John Dotson, John is our connection with UTI, and they said he was such a gentleman, which we know when we met him. He's a Southern gentleman, and they said the experience was awesome, and they just were very impressed, and they wanted to make sure we knew that we had this connection.
Cool.
Because when they got there, not knowing, they didn't know this connection at the time, to bring this young man into the NASCAR school, and they started talking, and they met John, and the conversation apparently circled back to, I used to be from Sioux Falls. Do you know the Under the Hood show? Do you know the Nordstroms? Do you know Russ Evans? And they made that connection. And so I just wanted to give a shout out, whether he's listening to the show or not. But the people you're going to meet in that arena are excellent people, and I just wanted to reinforce that.
UTI.edu. 866-594-4150. We're going to Arizona. Talk to Randy. Randy, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hey, guys. I've got a 2016 F250 LT, which is, I guess, the base model. It's a four-wheel drive. And it's got the setup for a grader in the front. It's got the extra battery tray. And I go out in the hills and I play my radio, and you got all those lights all over the place, lighting in and getting in and out of the truck, and my battery goes dead, and there's no battery gauge on it. So I bought one of those lithium chargers, thank God. I was like 20 miles off the road yesterday, and it went dead. And I've been playing the radio. I've been out there camping 3 days, and I was starting it up, and I'd only let it start. I'd run it over 2,000 RPMs for maybe 5 minutes, so evidently that wasn't enough in intervals, So my question is, because this has happened twice, could I just buy a second battery, put it in that spot that's already there, and then could I just run cables over to the other one? And is that something I could do?
I have a better suggestion. Buy a Milwaukee radio with rechargeable batteries that match your tools that you're using, and don't run the truck radio. Because when you turn that key on and run the truck radio, you're energizing the entire computer system on that truck. It's sitting there draining more power than just the radio. And these new vehicles, when we were kids, what you're talking about is exactly what we did.
Key turned backwards.
Key turned backwards,
the
leave the battery on. You knew you could probably get
Speakers on the roof.
We'd go down and play tennis or whatever in Valley Springs. Ed Solheim, my friend, and I,
Yeah.
and we'd leave the windows down and the radio on, and you could probably get an hour, and then you'd be getting dead. Maybe let's get lucky, you get an hour and a half. And you just wanted a bigger battery, and nowadays they make such good rechargeable stuff. Just that practice is kind of gone the way the vehicles are set up. Russ, am I going off on a tangent there?
No, that's for sure. If you don't have an accessory, turn it back position on your vehicle, and some of them that do have the accessory, turn it forward, still powers a lot of stuff. Your windows can go up and down and things like that because your seats and all that, and the modules are powered. I would definitely go with get a different, get a radio you can plug in and use that way, so you keep that key off. But yes, you can put a second battery in. It's always a good idea to have a little extra power if you're out in the middle of nowhere like that.
Can't hurt anything.
Put it over there. You can run the cables across. They do, if you watch YouTube, you'll see the videos of how they run that. The factory cables, you could even buy those, and they'll just connect where the factory ones would and run across. So you've got one on each side like that, and that'll double your reserve capacity and also your cranking amp. So if you ever did get a real cold day or weak batteries, you've got twice as good a chance of it finally.
Now, Russ, when that truck would have been built new, if they would have had the option for dual batteries, like for a truck that was going to go to an outfitter to be upfitted with a van body in the back, or like a plow blade, or sometimes they just really go crazy and they order the truck from the factory. Won't they typically upgrade it with a larger charging system also?
Larger alternator or dual alternators. those trucks could be equipped with a dual alternator or a single alternator. So if
So he's still not. He may not be able to. If he runs it way down, he's not going to be able to charge it as quick.
Not as quick, but he can still charge it. It's the same way like with solar panels. If you're off grid like that, if you have, let's say a 3,000 watt solar array, you're going to charge your bank of 8 batteries very slowly. It may take a week, but if you've got a bank of 30,000 watts, you might power those things up in 4 hours. So with the alternator on a car, same way, they bring their level of charge up depending on what the discharge is of how many amps you have going in.
And he can, for what he wants to spend, outfit the truck, he could buy a nice speaker and be covered
he could buy
forever.
a whole setup of DeWalt or Milwaukee with a radio.
Well-
They might throw the radio in if you bought the right set.
If you want lots of noise, I've got a big Sony Bluetooth speaker, and
HK.
that thing goes for like 10 hours
Yep.
on a charge, and you can even plug it into your cigarette lighter to recharge. it
Yeah,
again if
we
want
bought
to,
an
or a
Explorer
PowerPoint.
Bluetooth, like a rolling little speaker at Sam's Club, and we've had that thing for 10
And
years.
then I use my phone, and it's
amazing.
Incredible sound.
Sounds
out of it.
great.
Yeah.
I get to hear the tunes
You got a
playing
lot
right
of
now.
you got a lot of advice there, Randy. Do we help you out there?
Yeah. Yeah, the Milwaukee one you're talking about. So you're saying you charge it and then it goes dead, and you just plug it in and charge it again when it goes dead. The radio you're talking about.
Yeah, well, you just can use your batteries right off your tools.
Yeah, if you have a couple of those and bring a spare, you're good
Yeah,
for.
they'll last forever.
Yeah.
DeWalt's got those setups, and it's just they got fans and all this different stuff you can get to run off that same battery package.
Any Bluetooth setup, really, it would help you too. Randy, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Henry. You're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you, Henry?
Yeah, I got a 13 Ford Focus 2 liter. I had to put a motor in it. The motor got hot, blew the head gasket. Got a used motor, had like 36,000 miles on it. Put it in. I cannot get it to idle. It's got 2 codes in it. Cylinder 1 misfire, cylinder 4 misfire. First I thought maybe a vacuum leak, put new plugs, coils on it. Hooked up a smoke machine to the intake system, can't find a vacuum leak in it. And it's also got a new mass airflow sensor.
And this misfire, the codes, does it also show that in the data in the misfire monitor? Or is it showing that it's continuously misfiring on those?
Oh, if you pick it up off an idle, it does not misfire.
But it does miss at idle?
At idle, yep, and it won't stay at 600 RPM. It'll drop to 3 and jump back to 1,000.
It's going to do that if it's going to do that if that thing's misfiring. I mean, you got to start at the basics on that. When we put an engine in, if we have a misfire issue, we start by scanning the data and verify. Okay, we've got a misfire on a couple cylinders. If we got 1 and 4, we got a misfire like that. The next step is we've got to start checking out why. Do we have the injectors plugged in? Is the fuel pressure good? Does that all look like it should? Then we check. We've got a scope where we can clip onto these coils individually and see if we have spark on those cylinders. And is the spark good? And that's our next step. And if we have good spark on those cylinders, then we have to go a little further, and we pull out the plugs and we do a compression check all the way across. And then we do a leak down test and see what's going on. Many things can cause that, including, and one thing that some people don't check as often is camshaft issues with timing. On engines, engines with timing belts, if the belt is put on a tooth off, it can cause all sorts of issues like that, misfires, idle issues, down the road issues. If it's an engine with a timing chain, they absolutely must not be turned backwards. What happens is the tensioner loses pressure when the oil pressure's dropped and they're sitting. And sometimes when an engine gets put in, you got to line up the bolts for the torque converter. So you turn it, and if a mechanic looks at it and says, oh, we're only a quarter inch away, let's just go backwards to meet it. Even we have done this before. We've learned, we move it back, it jumps a tooth, and then it can run rough. So you can find that by doing your compression test and leak down test. But
Yeah, and there's some of those motors people will pull the timing gear or the harmonic balancer off.
Yeah, don't take that off.
Don't ever take that off, and they'll pull it off to try to get clearance to get it by the
Yep.
frame rail.
And then you'll need a special tool to line it back up
Yeah.
again because it will throw the timing off and make it run.
So that's just something I wanted to
just
throw
like
out there
this.
too. And
Yeah.
Russ, one last thing before we let him go. If he blew a head gasket and filled the catalytic converters up, if it dumped a bunch of antifreeze,
Could have some back pressure.
Could have some back pressure causing it to do this?
Pop out an O2 sensor up ahead engine side of the
See if it clears out
converter
or
and
not.
see if it runs
Just
smooth.
check that.
Henry, thanks very much for the call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Tom. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Tom, what can we do for you?
Say I have a 2012 1500 Ram pickup truck. I have a check engine light on, and my remote start, it'll start and run for 10 seconds and shut off. I understand because of the check engine light. But a friend of mine at work says he thinks it's the flaps in front of the radiator. The motor might be out.
Yes. So if you have any codes in a vehicle and it's got a factory remote start, the factory remote start will either not start or it will shut it down when it sees the code. And it's possible that when you start this truck, there's no code because these shutters is what they call them. They will try to move when you start the car, depending on temperature and all that and airflow. And what may be happening is you fire it up on a remote start, it looks and says, oh, hey, there's a fault now in these doors. We've tested them, and they're stuck shut, frozen with ice, or they're just not working. So then it shuts it off because it doesn't want the possibility of an engine overheat. So it shuts the thing down. And that can be even if they're stuck wide open. But the grill shutters need to work. They need to be either fully open so you can drive the car or shut. It's better than, we used to put cardboard in front of the radiator, but that would overheat coolers like the transmission and thing, and it really wouldn't get a lot more heat to the engine. It was fine on a 1975 Impala, but it's really not good on the modern ones because they really need the airflow to work. So if you've got a problem with those grill shutters, that'll just need to be checked. And we've seen a few people have to replace the motors on those shutters before.
And like Russ said, it's not just the grill shutters, it's any system
Yeah.
that could potentially harm the vehicle if you're not with it. They don't want to remote start it. I know my Chevrolet app, it says right on the app, all good, and then it starts. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes through a system check, and it's saying that, it doesn't say it to you, but it's on the app. And I just you just don't pay attention to that as long as the vehicle starts. But I'm sure if the truck didn't start, it would be telling me, nope, not good.
Right.
And nowadays it would probably tell you why.
Do those shutters, they operate on the engine temperature or outside temperature?
The computer controls them, and they open and closed based on temperatures of outside and also temperatures of the systems in the vehicle. If it sees that you have an overheat on oil temp, it's going to open the shutters. Overheat on the transmission oil temp, it's going to open the shutters and try to get more airflow through there. If it sees that it is warm outside, but the transmission oil temp and engine oil temp is too low and the engine temp is still cool enough on the coolant, it's going to shut them to try to raise those temps up to operating temperature quicker to protect components. Then it's going to open again. So it uses a lot of different inputs, outside temp, fluid temperatures, etc., to open and close
There are
those.
people that think they need to remove these for a performance application or whatever. They'll actually take the fins out of them and leave the motor intact so that the system still thinks it's moving.
Okay.
I read that online playing with, I hit a pheasant and I dislodged and jammed one in a pretty new car. And I was getting a check engine light, and I was just amazed what I found when I started reading the internet. But vehicle speed will come into play too on some of those when they.
The guy that was dared to hit the snowman last year, remember?
Yeah.
Broke the grill shutters.
Tom, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Go to Oregon and talk to Ron. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Ron, what can we do for you?
Howdy. I've got a 2002 Dodge Dakota, 4-door, two-wheel drive. Got the 3.9 V6 and a 5-speed. And I'm just up against a problem that I can't find the information on the internet. Nobody else has heard. I thought I'd give you guys a try. When I shift gears, like from first to second, second to third, whatever, you have to release the throttle, kind of go 1 and 2, and then step on the clutch, or the engine will flare about 250 RPM. Every shift, whether it's warm, cold, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Just never run across this before.
Well, the idle air control motor could be failing or gummed up with sludge and carbon, or you could also have a failing clutch switch on that. I believe that one has a double type clutch switch. It's got one part that tells it it's okay to crank the engine. When you step on it, it allows you to crank the engine up by closing the starter circuit. The other part of it tells the engine computer it's in neutral, that you've stepped on the clutch, and be prepared for the load being removed. So don't idle this thing up. Give it a half a second after the clutch is pressed to see what's going on before you idle it up, because otherwise it'd be like you going down the road, you got your foot it's on cruise, and you step on the clutch, and all of a sudden it's going to go up before it comes down. So a couple things to check on that. The clutch switch, and they're pretty cheap. If it's older, you could replace that thing. Pretty easy to replace, just right under the dash there on the top of the pedal. And then the other thing would be that idle air control motor. Lots of sludge. We've cleaned lots of sludge off of those for this problem before.
Ron, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. I have a question relating to Ron's issue. What are they waiting for to bring back the Dakota?
I don't know.
I'm so surprised that
Probably
that
going to
hasn't-
come back as an SUV.
It's going to come back as an electric.
No,
Probably.
Well,
It'll be an electric mid-sized truck. Just watch.
SUV maybe,
but why?
like a Journey,
Get that
electric
thing.
Journey.
Get that thing out there. Everybody's buying them. Come on, Stellantis, get that done. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Until next time, which will be in just a few minutes, you can find us at underthehoodshow.com. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Hour 2 is coming up.
What are we doing with Reese?
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. Reese has been on hold for a while here, so let's get to Reese right away. Reese, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Good morning. I just wanted to let you know, after 2 phone calls to other places that wanted to schedule me for tires next week, this place I walked into and they had a Nordstrom flyer laying on their counter, and in less than 15 minutes, it just about got me ready to get out the door.
That's impressive, and it's probably a vendor of ours. I mean,
just by association,
we've got
better.
people that we work with, and we've got a lot of great accounts that we work with, and it's good to hear that.
Any guess on who this one is?
I don't guess because there's so many. There is a bunch.
This would be the place called Bargain Barn. I've been buying tires from these guys for a long time. I don't know why I even call anybody else.
Long-time friends of ours and customers.
Mm-hmm.
They that goes clear back to Houston Speedway and racing with the great Marty Barber. And
that's
pulling it. That goes back a long ways. Those guys built some. Well, they still do some racing, but they built some amazing stock cars back in the day too.
Reese, these guys get you in, you get to see what they're doing, and I didn't have to wait a week to schedule it and then try to fit it in somewhere. I just drove in.
Well, that's awesome.
Thanks, Reese. Send those guys a bill.
Yeah.
Don't forget. Reese, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's go right to Nebraska and talk to Steve. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Steve, what can we do for you?
I either got an electrical problem or a fuel problem. I don't know which.
We've had a lot of those calls, Steve.
That's been the topic the last year.
One or the other.
I'm a guy that bought the 2000 Chevy half-ton four-wheel drive. It had 40,000 miles on it last spring.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, it started, I guess, about 45 mile an hour, started chugging. And the motor was missing really bad until I got about 60, 45 to 60 more or less. I took it out to my cousin. He put the computer on, checked it out. He's a mechanic. And the only thing he could find, he said 2 wires were messed up on number 6, number 7 cylinders. I guess going from the coil pack to the plug. They repaired those wires. Took it out, doing the same thing again. So I took it down to the GM dealer in Norfolk. They checked out their computer. It says fuel filter. They put a fuel filter in. So did that, it didn't make any difference. They did the same thing. Took it back to it, said no fuel pump. Said fuel pump. Okay, let's just wait on this. Took it back after my cousin again. He's adamant it's not fuel. It's number 7 coil pack. It's one of those I replace the wires on. Replace number 7 coil pack, it'll be just fine. I went back to the GM dealer, and they said, no, it's not the fuel pump, it's not the fuel filter. It's the transmission. We need to change transmission for the core of anti-surge additive. I never heard of anti-surge additive, but it said it exists. So it needed to have an oil change in it, transmission change anyway, so I didn't do that. Still doing it, but now it's changed to about 60 to 65 miles an hour. So it did get better. It's not fixed.
Oh boy.
The strange thing is, when it's doing that chugging, I press down the accelerator, kick out overdrive, immediately disappears. Runs fine.
Okay. Well, when they do that, I can see why they're thinking about putting an anti-shudder, anti-chatter additive in the transmission, because a lot of these have been having torque converter issues with the transmission. So that torque converter would jump and shudder like you're running over little rumble strips on the side of the road, like when you're coming up to a stop sign or something. They just kind of shake and vibrate. So if it's actually not misfiring, it could be that the torque converter is chattering, so they were trying to put that in to fix it. And if it's moved now after a few hundred miles of driving like that to a different RPM range, it could definitely be transmission related. It's the torque converter as it locks up. If you lightly rested your foot on the brake pedal, just maybe a quarter inch down, enough to kick the brake lights on, and it goes away as well, that's in the, the torque converter disengages when you do that. So that could be what's going on. The misfire, if it is actually misfiring, a mechanic should be able to ride in the passenger seat with a scanner plugged in and watch the misfire monitor and see. If it's not missing, then it's more than likely transmission related. If it is missing, you're going to have to figure out which cylinder is missing by that data and then make repairs accordingly. It could be ignition, like a coil, a plug wire, even a spark plug with a crack in the porcelain or something. It could also be a compression issue. You've got low compression in the cylinder. You've got a valve that's leaking, or you even have, we'll see a lot like with the Dodges, if the cam starts wearing out, we're seeing cam problems in a lot of vehicles now, it doesn't open up the valve enough. It opens up a very tiny amount, lets enough air in and fuel in for driving at low speeds, but at the higher RPMs, like over 2,000, it can't pull enough air in, and it starts misfiring, even though the engine is completely quiet up top. That was a problem mainly with the active fuel management engines, and this 2000 would not be. But
just to give some generalities to other people listening that might have a similar problem in a different vehicle.
A worn cam could cause it too. So this is going to take some diagnosis. It sounds like you're going through a lot of places and they're doing different things. It's better sometimes to just stick with one shop that's got a lot of experience with these things so they can keep. It's going to be kind of like switching doctors. You go in for a problem, you've been working on it for 6 months, and then you want to go to a different doctor, and they work on it, and then you come back, and they don't.
And sometimes that different doctor says, "Hey, have you tried this?" I'm like, "No, we haven't tried that." Well, this is what that worked. It doesn't make the other one bad. They just didn't have that line of thinking. Sometimes you need to just change the line of thinking, or start from the beginning again, which is what happens a lot of times when people move their medical to one of the premier centers. They'll go in and they'll say, "Nope, we're not going to do anything until we start from the beginning and see all the records." It's kind of that sort of a deal. But what Russ makes a very important comment. Might cost a little more money. You might have to ask and push a little bit, but just to have them make sure that they're doing a active drive along with the scanner hooked up, monitoring. I'm sure they are, but make sure that they're doing that to see, is this thing actually misfiring or not? They can see that.
If it's a transmission, why does it not do it when I kick it out of overdrive? When I press the accelerator down, it works fine after that.
When you step on that accelerator, it turns the torque converter off, just like resting your foot on the brake. It opens up the torque converter. It's into slip mode. It's when it's engaged that it would be chattering. That's why that would do it if it was a transmission.
Because that torque converter is trying to lock up those gears inside of there so that it becomes a big, spinning, massive centrifugal force. And when it releases, the clutches slip so that it's easier for it to roll at slower speeds. But you want to get that big weight flowing in there when you're at higher speeds to help with the rotation of everything. But when it doesn't lock good, then it just starts to just chatter amongst itself, and you can feel that through the drive chain.
Steve, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Now we're going to go to New York and talk to Robert. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Robert, what can we do for you?
I have trouble starting a 1966 T-Bird. Okay, the third time I turned the key to crank it, nothing happened. I turned the key to the off position, and then it started to crank. And the starter relay smoked under the hood. So I was just concerned do you think it's the starter or I replaced the relay, which after replacing the relay, I saw in the bottom of the package it says I was supposed to double wrench the wires, the power wires, which I didn't do. I hope it still works after that. But do you think I'm just concerned because I don't want to set the car on fire. I haven't tried it yet, and I know it was a little cold. And the volts, I checked the voltage on the battery, and there was a 12.4. I charged it up, and now I got 12.6. I'm going to wait till Saturday when it's a warmer day and try and start it again. Hello?
Yeah. You're just going to have to see what happens when you go to try to start it. But if his starter relay goes bad, yeah, it'll stick. You turn the key off after you've tried to crank it, it's going to just keep going. But you do need to put 2 wrenches on that relay when you're doing it. Otherwise, you can turn the post around. And if you do, it can cause some issues. It may be fine, but it could also, break the contact inside. So you'll just have to see what it does. If it engages and works fine and everything's tight, then you should be okay. But starter's probably not affecting the relay. It may just be the relay has failed on it. But, at that age, you could have any of those components, either the switch, the relay, or the starter failing on it.
His concern about a risk for fire after what just happened.
If it continues to crank, yeah, that's always a risk. Because sometimes on those old cars, it's good to have a battery disconnect just so if it keeps cranking, you can just go up there and pull the lever and shut it off.
I was just at a museum doing an interview that will air eventually on our YouTube channel at Spomer Classics in Worthington, Minnesota. We had talked about that on the show, recent show. And one thing I noticed on all of his cars is that he had a copper bridge disconnect on every one of them. On every battery, they were totally disconnected from power as they sat there in his museum. And so you see that time to time on cars that sit a lot. And it was a really easy thing to use. You just drop it back down, like the old director cut, drop it back down for power. And that would be a way to just make sure, and not just for this reason, but for other reasons. And you could put a battery tender on there and have the battery tender in place and have that power disconnect so you don't have to worry about it, and you'd be good to go. But after you put that relay in, you got to really pay attention to things, make sure nothing's getting warm, feel the relay, go check it a little bit after a while. Just make sure you don't have any power leaching into that. And when it does get ready to start, if it's starting to do the same thing again, you know what to disconnect right away. And you can get down there and check that starter to see if you're getting your 12 volts or if you're not getting your 12 volts and just kind of trace the system backwards if you do start having problems again. But it could just be that relay's gotten old and gotten moisture inside of it and just decided that it was done.
Does that help you out there, Robert?
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much.
Hey, Robert, before you hang up, 66 T-Bird, we're into that category. There's a couple things we got to tell you. Insurance, if this is not a daily driver, Berkeley Classics, Berkeley One, that is where you got to go to check out for your car insurance. You can save a bunch of money. You can agree on a value. Make sure you check that out.
They've been sponsor of ours,
friends of ours for lots of years.
They give you discounts for being a car club member, and a car club can help you out with questions like this.
Yep. Okay. But they've been, Russ and I both use their products, and so we believe in them. And then also, we like to guess the color of unique and classic cars.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got a 66 Thunderbird that falls into that category. And before we hang up, we have to guess the color of that car. So I'm thinking it's dark brown.
Dark brown. I'm going with white. Oh, did I take your guess?
Yeah, I'll go with maroon.
Maroon. Robert, what color is the T-Bird?
It's blue, baby blue with a white Landau roof.
Sounds
white
beautiful.
Interior.
Sounds fun.
I'm taking that as a win. The roof's white. Robert, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. 4150. Let's talk to Dave. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dave, what can we do for you?
Hey, fellas, just got a question that came to mind here. I got a 2020 F350 diesel, and what do you think about those winter covers put on the front? Yay or nay?
I don't like them. If the truck doesn't have automatic shutters, I don't like the winter covers because the engine has the ability to, there's a thermostat in there that's going to stay 100% shut until the engine reaches operating temperature. So it's not going to be letting any coolant up into the radiator that you'd want to keep warmer anyways. And you need that airflow, especially on a diesel, for engine oil cooler, transmission oil cooler, power steering oil cooler. If you don't have airflow to those, especially on a truck that's used for plowing or something like that, you can burn up components. And a lot of them, I believe on this one specifically, if you had a warranty on that, you took it into the dealer and you had an issue with any of those, first thing they're going to do is they're going to look and see if you've got a cover on the front. They void it. They're like, nope.
I'm going to throw something on that I've never said on the air before. And
Okay.
if I have, I forgot it.
Hippopotamus?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. No. Does Ford offer a factory, buy it as an accessory through the Ford parts department winter front for that truck?
Yes, I mean it's not a Ford brand one. It's the FIA. I mean,
But
they've
it's
been
but
around
it's in the
forever.
Ford parts catalog.
Not
I
just a
can't answer
dealer
that.
accessory.
Okay.
Yeah, dealers have a lot of accessories.
Dealers
and
sell a lot of
some
accessories that sometimes I wonder about that if they've actually checked if they should be selling that accessory.
Right.
As an example, on a new Duramax, there is an available factory option, a factory part number, GM part number for a winter front for that truck.
that doesn't 100% block.
And
It's
it comes with very specific instructions about when to use, how to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to throw out there, if the factory doesn't offer one with a factory part number through their manufacturer channels, I probably wouldn't put one on because you probably don't need it. They got this technology buttoned up pretty darn good.
Do we need them anymore for newer, late model, last 5 years? We just don't need those, do we?
The
They've
demand
got it.
is.
We had one
It's
earlier.
going to have to be a very. I think it's going to have to be a very extreme climate situation.
Right. Yeah. Dave, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Tim. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Tim, what can we do for you?
I have a 99 GMC Suburban, and several years ago, the guy that worked on my truck said that my wheel bearing might be going bad. And I've noticed a little road noise lately when I ease off on the gas, doing about between 60 and 30. And so I jacked up the rear wheel to see if there was any wobble on the drive side, and there was no problem. And I jacked up the other side, and it was good top to bottom, side to side. But it went in and out, maybe a quarter inch, half inch, and I could get it to clunk. Is that a problem?
That's excessive. If it moves a quarter inch in and out, and the
It's
other
quite a bit of wear on
side's
the side gears or something.
not moving much, yeah, there's something going on in that rear end because the axle shaft slides all the way in from the outside, and then it's got a clip on the inside of it, and then your pins in there. You got to have some wear going on for that to go in and out.
Because there's going to be a little bit of movement.
They'll move some. They'll clunk, clunk, clunk back
Yeah.
and forth, but to move a quarter inch is a lot. So if it's making noise when you're letting off the accelerator, it sounds like you might have spider gears or something really worn in that.
Yeah, you're going to
rear
want to
end.
have somebody pull that cover off. I mean, I know we're going right where you let us, but that does sound excessive. But what your friend had told you too about front wheel bearings, extremely common to go bad on that vehicle. The front.
No, it was rear wheel.
Yeah, the rear wheel is not common. The rear ends are common to get worn. It's a 10-bolt GM rear end. They used them in tons of half-ton trucks. They used them clear back to 1981.
Oh, wow.
And they, even before that in some cars, and they still used them clear up past that. That 10-bolt cover went for a long ways, but they wear, especially on a heavy rig that might have gotten driven or maybe pulled a boat a lot or put a lot of strain on it. They wear. And at that age, very, very possible. But as far as like the outer wheel bearings and that sort of stuff, not as common of a problem on one of them unless you run it out of grease or have a leak or that sort of thing. The problems are usually in the center of the rear end itself on that particular model.
Tim, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to talk to Jeff. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Jeff, what can we do for you?
A couple things. See if you guys can guess the color of my 66 Olds Cutlass convertible. But my original question is, I was on the internet and cruising around, and this ad came up for this Echo OBD2. The guy said he was going to get shut down by the big oil companies, but it has something to do with the emissions and the lower emissions, and it says it improves your fuel mileage about 15%, and I've got a 2020 Chevy Silverado. It won't do any damage putting it on my OBD2.
It might. Without testing it long term on multiple vehicles, we couldn't answer that, but there have been products in the past that have done that, and yes, they have because they run vehicles too lean, so it's possible.
I would guess that part of what he heard is true. They probably will get shut down, but it won't be by the big oil companies. It'll be by the FTC.
If it was so simple that a company could make a product that they could make so much money on like this to do this, the manufacturers would be putting it into their own vehicles because they have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars yearly to make their new vehicles designed to meet federal mileage requirements that keep increasing and emissions requirements. If they had a simple fix to do it, they would just do it. They would do it in smaller increments, but they would just do it.
If GM could all of a sudden put out a pickup that made 10 to 15 miles per gallon, or even 5 miles per gallon better than the competition, they do it because they'd own the market.
If you get on YouTube and watch actual reviews that people of that product, you'll see the truth when people say, you know what, I tried this for 6 months and it worked.
And get past the first 5 comments that were done by their buddies.
Right.
Yeah.
And their friends.
Ones that are not sponsored, just
in general,
trusted people.
Things that fall under the
saving fuel
broad umbrella of gadgets for saving fuel
don't work.
Have never worked.
All right, his 66 Cutlass, that unit will not work on there.
Right.
And his car is like a burnt brownish color.
I'm going with light blue.
It's white.
What color?
It's got the 330. It's got the 330, probably the lowest V8 that they had.
Oh, it's got a 330. It's gold.
What color is it?
It is a Danube blue with a powder blue convertible top.
That is unusual, the blue top.
There we go. I'm 2 for 2.
Well, if you take 50% right.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you follow us on Facebook and you join the Hoodie fan club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Patty Montoya. Congratulations from all of us here at the Under the Hood Show and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu.
You know, I just thought of when I heard that name. Juan Pablo hitting the jet dryer at Daytona.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Juan Pablo Montoya that
It
hit
was.
the jet
Yep.
dryer?
On Monday night.
Yeah, the race delayed Daytona 500. Anyway, I just thought of that.
All right.
Very random.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Dan. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dan, what can we do for you? Dan, are you there? Oh, wait, I went to Matt. Matt, hold on. You're not on yet. Sorry, I got you excited. I screwed up. Let's talk to Dan. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dan, what can I do for you?
I'm wondering if a 2002 or 2000 to 2006 Chevy 5.3 can be put into a 08, 09 Chevy 1500 pickup.
It cannot. Well, let me back up.
No, crank's different. That old style
They had
06
the
data
different
rate.
crank reluctor wheel on it.
You could change the crankshaft and
Yeah.
do it, but they switch, so you're going to have a different data rate, and it wouldn't run. You could bolt it in, and it'd look pretty, and you get it all together, and you try to crank it, and it wouldn't start. It might bang and pop now and then, be like, what's going on? And we've had this happen where somebody said, this is why we verify VIN numbers. If you call here at Nordstrom's and say, I want an engine, what vehicle does it fit? And let's get that VIN number, especially when it's really close. If it's an 07, give me your VIN number. Is it an old 07 or is it a new 07? Because if it's the old with that low data rate reluctor wheel,
One had a 48 and one had a 32?
yeah, it's not going to work. So you want to make sure it's correct. So we verify that, get the VIN number, the letter, like, okay, this is a VIN, whatever it is, on no matter the manufacturer. And then we know we got the right one. But no, it won't go in. A lot of stuff's interchangeable, heads and bolt-ons and different things. But as far as the engine itself goes, it won't work.
Yep, it's the same way when you get there's some Mopars that you look them up and they say mid-year, does it have this computer or this computer? Well, it's not just because they're being finicky. It's because it's a totally different control system on the engine. And the way the baud rate, the data rate, like you want to run things through, it's all different. And so, no.
Yep.
Pretty straightforward answer there.
That is.
So
what about the repair on this style? That 07, 8, 9.
What's yours doing?
I'm sure it's
Cam?
I'm sure the cam, yeah.
Well, if you tear it down and you don't find any metal in the system, clogging stuff up, I mean zero, not even some specks here and there that are going to clog up the AFM, you can replace
Active fuel management for people that
you
are
can
wondering.
replace the cam and if it's got some wear on it, all the lifters, the AFM manifold for that active fuel management, and get her going again. But if there's any flakes of metal in there, what's going to happen is it's going to start clogging things up again. It's going to jam in that AFM and the solenoids and in the lifters and cause repeat failures. We've had many people come to our shop that have had this problem. They took it in, got it repaired at a shop or the dealership, and they're back at our place 6 months later with the same issue, and they're like, well, do we do this again? We're like, absolutely not, because this is why it failed again. You need to replace this engine with a different engine. A certified used engine would be fine, but it's got to be replaced. Typically, we see quite a bit of metal. When those cams start coming apart and the lifters are failing, we see...
We've done way more engines than we have cams.
Right.
But we have done cams, and they've worked.
We've done them in a couple of them, and actually one worked, one didn't work. So the one that didn't work lasted about 8 months and failed, and we said, okay, well, let's just work out the difference here, what it would have been if we would have done an engine, and we just took care of them and helped them out. But it's a bad
So
deal.
if you knew somebody that could help you, and you took it apart, and it looked pretty darn good, you can do it, but you're taking a calculated risk.
Dan, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Kurt. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Kurt, what can we do for you?
Well, I got a 94 Ford pickup, F-150, 302 automatic. And when I bought it quite a few years ago, tranny was acting up. The torque converter was bad. I knew it was wrong. So I jerked the tranny, had a local guy, professional guy, just look at the tranny. It was all good. Put it back together. Well, then she started acting up in the summertime, going down the road. She'd jump out of overdrive. She'd take right down to second into neutral, all over the place. And like now in the winter, she shifts like a dream. So I'm wondering what you guys think. Could the capacitors be out of the computer on it, causing that? I got to pull the, I was going to do it this winter. Pull the computer out and resolder new capacitors in it. They can not shift.
A computer could cause that, but the other thing that could cause that too is a transmission oil cooler that's not flowing really well or doesn't have a lot of good airflow, so the fluid's getting too hot on the warmer days.
No, I work at the quarry. I'm retired out of a power plant. I grew up in a family stone quarry business, so I drive belly dump in the summer. So my truck sits all day out to the quarry. In the morning, she shifts perfect. And when she sits out in the sun all day coming home, that thing's like, sometimes I don't know if I'll make it home.
You mean as soon as you take off, like if it sits in the sun all day and it drove fine to work, you fire it up, and the second you pull out of the parking lot, it's doing it?
Yeah, running home, she'll start jumping all over the place.
That's, yeah, if you took the cooler off the trans and blocked off the holes, you should at least get a few miles out of it before it gets really hot. So that would indicate more of a electronic issue. We've seen solenoids fail in those transmissions a little bit, but yeah, it's been a long time since we've had one. We put a computer in one of those, but we have put some of those computers in. You might still be able to find one of those. It's not security or anything.
What about just the old problem they had with a few of them with that wiring harness and the plug-in on the side of the tranny?
Yeah, and the wiring would chafe where it runs off the back of the motor behind the heads.
Temperature could affect that if it sat, and it could do that. Have you ever replaced that harness or the switch on the side of the tranny?
No, but I've checked all that, and everything's clean, and I put dielectric grease on it. This truck is like primo.
It sounds like what you're telling me. You've been pretty intimate with this truck.
Yeah, and a buddy of mine, mechanic, he said, Kurt, he wanted me. I changed out the throttle position sensor. So maybe it's getting tired, so we did that and all. And then I changed out the speed sensor on the rear end. That helped a little bit, but of course, you know the oil cooler's in the radiator on this truck.
Yes. No.
And the truck only has 80,000 on.
Yeah, see, that's one of the first years, like 92, 93, 94. That's when they started with that E4OD. Is that what it has, or is it a 4R70W?
It's got that oddball tranny that's only in the 302, I think.
Okay, do you have a push button on the end of your shifter?
No, mine don't have it. It's newer than that one.
Okay, and so you don't have a push button on the dash for overdrive either?
Yes, it does. That's right. No, it's on the shifter. That's right.
Yeah. Yep. So I believe that's E4OD. E4OD, and then you've got some pretty early electronics going on there, and if they don't get a proper signal for the position of the transmission, it will cause all kinds of weird errors. I would really consider putting a new, what's the official term for the switch on the side of the tranny, the range switch. It's
the Prindle switch.
Well,
PRNDL.
Yeah, that's not the exact thing, but the multi-function, multi-position switch or whatever it is on the side of the tranny. I would replace that.
MMP.
No, I just can't say the name right now. I would replace it.
All right.
And I would try that before I did anything else.
Kurt, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. I'm going to go back to Matt now because I tricked him before. I got his hopes up. So we're going to talk to Matt. You're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Well, I got a 1962 W100 Power Wagon that I'm starting to rebuild. And the problem I'm running into is the tank that's in it is behind the seat in the cab for the gas tank. And when I got this, I got it out of a junkyard. It'd been sitting for about 20 years. Still turns over, still spins, but that tank is just awful inside. Would you try to source an OEM tank if you're not going to restore it, or would you just move to a fuel cell on that and get that tank out from behind the seat?
Well, if you can find a brand new OEM tank and you're willing to leave it behind the seat, you could put that in, and that would be one way to go if it's affordable. The other way to go would be to take that tank out, make sure it's completely drained, make sure there's no rust on it. Typically, they don't have a lot of rust on them when they're behind the seat. Fill it up to the top with apple cider vinegar.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
And let it sit for about a month. It'll clean everything down. I mean, it's apple cider vinegar, so it's not going to be really hazardous to you unless you drink it. Don't do that. But
before you can. You
yeah,
can take
before.
You can take a
I don't
hit
eat
as you're
Tide
pouring in.
Pods, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, you're good. Bad TikTok things to do. So just look in there, and you can tip it over to the side a little bit, look and see the bare metal, and when it's nice and shiny and clean and no more rust, then dump it all out. Again, it's apple cider vinegar.
Don't drink it then, though.
And then they do have some coatings you can get to put in there. Otherwise, when you fill it with fuel every time, you can put in, there are fuel additives that are made out there you can put in that have rust preventative in them. So you put it in and it protects your tank from the vapors keep it going. But if you want to get it out of the cab so you have room behind the seat for speakers and storage and whatever you want, the thing to do would be to look and see what people have been doing on YouTube with optional fuel cell things to put them in. The only thing is you got to move your fuel filler neck because your fuel filler neck is up on the side, and you're going to have that down below in the back somewhere to make it work. You could always put it in the bed as well if you wanted to in the front. You can get
People get pretty creative when they start moving those around.
Yeah.
But and if you find out that your tank is so rusted it's just not repairable and you can't get an aftermarket tank to go in the cab, you might want to put the one in the back. Just remember, the hardest part is the fuel gauge. Because that factory one's got a fuel gauge in it, and it may no longer be any good, and they may not make the sending unit. So you might have to get it. But the Power Wagon is a pretty sought-after vehicle.
Before we go, Matt,
popular.
we're going to let you go here.
We got to get, this is a color guess.
Right, I'm going first.
Just wait, I want to know one thing, though.
Oh, okay.
Is the paint still on it?
Yeah, are you going to keep it the original color, or will it become a custom color when you're done? And don't tell us the color.
It's already a custom color.
Oh.
Okay, see?
Over
That's
its years of life. It was a ranch truck.
Do we know what the original color was?
In the door or something?
The turquoise, greenish blue.
That's what I'm going with then. Turquoise.
I was going to
blue.
say green.
Okay, so I'm going to say that the custom color that was put on it was, I think they just went black.
Black?
Yellow.
Oh, I'm
Like
going to
that.
say
That color yellow.
They oversprayed it black.
Ah.
All right, there you go. Matt, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. We need to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Danny in Missouri. Danny, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I've got a 2012 F-150 EcoBoost engine. I've got about 200,000 miles on it. And for a little while, I've been having of a morning a startup rattle. I'm assuming it's the timing chain, perhaps maybe stretched. The question I had, the oiling system of that's not adjustable by the PC, is it?
No.
You can't adjust any of that through adjustments with a computer, right?
Correct. The oiling system is just mechanical, manual, doesn't adjust. It's just when you start it up, it's spraying oil on the timing chains. And the timing chains, the only thing adjustable there are the camshaft actuators, the phasers. The tension on the chains is set automatically when you fire it up. But it is common on those vehicles to have timing chain stretch and also tensioners that stick and fail. So some people have successfully put tensioners in and fixed the problem. You can pull out the cam sensor there on the passenger bank to do some measurements of wear of the chain. And if you measure that and find out the chain's really not stretched, but it's still doing this, you can put tensioners in it and
probably get some more miles out of it.
Possibly fix it, yeah.
Because 200,000 miles is impressive. It's awesome.
If it's running good, the turbos are good, it's not using any oil, not making any other noise other than the timing chains. You know, I've seen people throw timing chains in and fix them. And we've had other ones that have been overworked, over-purposed for what they were designed for, and they've blown them up at 50,000 miles. So you got 200,000 on it. It kind of tells me that you've been driving it the way it was meant to be driven, and it could probably go longer. We have seen a few of these come in that people had close to 300,000 miles on them, and it just gives me the encouragement that these engines can last longer.
You need to see one of those every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Or hear about them.
I see. Okay. Now, one more quick question. I know you got to go. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and I think I may have, according to him, gone the wrong way. I'm under the impression, okay, that the not getting oil the first thing of the morning, once the oil hits that chain, well then it goes away, and it's good for the rest of the day. So I started putting a Lucas oil additive whenever I changed the oil. I had a gentleman telling me the other day he is definitely not a Lucas oil fan. And he suggested, what was he suggested?
Yeah, I don't think that the oil additive would help that. An oil cleaner, an oil system cleaner, such as the Justice Brothers oil system cleaner, would clean out the gum and varnish that is sticking those holes. The additives are more of a dry start lubricant, and that can actually plug up some of the systems sometimes and make it worse. So you want to get more flow by cleaning it out.
Yeah, you need more volume of
And
oil.
we're talking in a specific right before you change the oil.
Yep, run it for about 10 minutes, change it, and do that at every oil change for the next few and see if it goes away. And we have seen that fix problems on a few of these, but a lot of times it's typically just the bore of the tensioner is worn out, so it's just bleeding internally, and it can't go out until the first time it starts. Then it's got a little oil behind it. You start it up, you're good the rest of the day.
Danny, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Taylor. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Taylor, what can we do for you?
So I got a 2006 Chevy Silverado 1500, and I just recently took it to a local shop here in Sioux Falls and got a used transmission put in it. And the problem I'm having is when I'm driving it, my RPMs will jump up about 400 or 500 RPMs before it'll shift. Just kind of trying to figure out where I need to look to get that figured out.
Well, you may need to relearn, and sometimes driving it'll help relearn itself if you haven't done it with a scan tool. But make sure you don't allow it to slip between gears. When you know it's going to slip, you let off it a little bit and let it shift, and then the computer will adjust that transmission pressure accordingly to take that up as it does a relearn.
It says, I don't like this. I got to make sure this is getting tightened up.
But it could also be that the transmission does have, once that's done, if it continues to do that, you may have to either, one, replace the valve body in there, do some work on that, or replace that transmission. And depending on where you got it, if it's a transmission failure and it's something major inside like that, that place would exchange your transmission.
They should be able to look inside there with the computer and see what the pressures are doing.
We've had a few that we've put in that have been a used part, and out of hundreds that we put in, so it's a low percentage, but we've had a problem with them, and we've chosen to repair them by means of valve body or a torque converter or something instead of wasting a complete product, because that's not an efficient method of recycling by just saying, well, we'll just get another one and throw in there. Well, then what do you do with the other one? You want to fix what's going on and make sure that everything's in good shape. If there's not a ton of clutch material in the pan, it means that the transmission's in good shape. It just can't get the pressure because the valves are not moving like they should.
A little more investigation needed.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here. Just a couple minutes left. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
Well, I won't spend a bunch of time on it, but I just want to say this exact day where we're recording live is our son's birthday, so happy birthday, Riley. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, happy birthday.
24 years old today.
All right.
How'd that happen?
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
How'd that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just talking about your son being off away, and Russ's family's got 600 kids, and you got this. It's just amazing how it changes. We lost a really good friend of Russ's yesterday. It was a funeral.
Yeah, you've heard us talk about Audio Playground on the radio, and after a very valiant, over a decade battle with lymphoma cancer, Daryl, just about a month ago, just changed quickly, and we lost him yesterday. But we were talking about playing the stereos on the thing, so keep your watching your battery on a truck in an earlier show here. Well, the funeral director had been friends with us, the owner of the funeral home, since like 1990. So we were all really close. There was about 7 of us there, and we were playing Def Leppard blasted on the speakers of the hearse as we were at the grave site. So I mean, we had many more good times than the sadness. It was overcoming the sadness most of the time of the thing. But Audio Playground is going on. They got some amazing people there. He's been in and out of there for the last couple
Daryl
years.
and Patty started that business before they were married. Then they got married.
Like 22 years ago, and they're running full force now.
They've been a go-to for us for years, and that's where I got to be friends with them, is through the stereo world and doing work. And said Russ worked with him for years, and so they've been good friends. You may have noticed on a recent episode, Russ got a little. You're watching the YouTube video. We were talking about a bypass module, and that's when we knew Russ knew that Daryl was really sick, and it kind of hit him emotionally that he couldn't just make that referral or call Daryl real quick. And so that's hard stuff, but we wish the family the best, and we have our prayers with them, and God bless.
Interview. The Blaster interview. I sent the
Blaster.
invites out. Like
your voice, you got to hang in there a little longer.
Got to get it going. It's the after show.
Blast it.
You know why it's called the after show?
Because it's after the show.
Same joke I've used before.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have just one note, 2 notes from my trip to New York, vehicle-wise.
People may not know about your trip to New York, so give the synapse of why you were there. Why you were in New York.
My daughter's in the South Dakota State University marching band. They marched in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Awesome.
So we were out there to watch that. And first of all, the Wagoneer, the new Wagoneer, the $100,000 Wagoneer, it's everywhere.
You saw them everywhere out there?
Everywhere.
Really? I see a few around our park.
Yeah, we were in Manhattan.
So expensive.
We were in Manhattan. We stayed actually in Times Square. And the number of black vehicles, the big black Suburbans and Escalades and Wagoneer. Just
Miami,
tons
it's
of them.
Lamborghini Urus.
Yeah.
There, I can see the Grand Wagoneer.
Also, there was when you park there, we went on a bus tour, and the lady was saying that she'd never had
Can
a
I stop
car.
you for a second? Are you
Yeah.
sure all them black Wagoneers wasn't just because of the number of VIPs in the parade and they were just taking people around?
I was there for a week. So,
Ah.
well, they're all for hire. They're all black. They're all limos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm dumb. So they're Uber Blacks and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
And then
Uber XL, I guess is.
yeah, we all the parking ramps. First of all, the one parking we saw one sign that said parking available, monthly rates $1,800 a month. But the parking ramps, they put the cool cars up front. You know, when you pull in, so every time you go past a parking ramp, there's cool cars sitting
Parking
there.
ramp like they do at a hotel.
Like
cars out front.
A parking ramp.
Okay.
Wherever. Any parking ramp you go to where you can
No,
see
I'm making they're putting the cars out front of the ramp like they do at cool hotels.
Like a
Right.
display.
Yeah,
the best ones
yes,
up
yeah,
front.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And at one point, we were walking with a group of people, and there were 3 cars parked there, back to back, and they were like, "Oh," and somebody goes, "Oh, Chris, you're on a car show. What are those? What?" Because everybody had to stop and look, and they turned the light on me. "Oh, you do a car show. You should know what these are."
How do you respond in that situation?
And I said, "I'm going to surprise everyone here, but no one more than I'm going to surprise my wife, because I actually know the answer. And then when I tell you, you're going to all be surprised." And I lucked out because I happened to, on the flight, read an article about 2 of the cars that were
boy.
sitting in front of me, or I would not have known exactly
And
what
you
they
could
were.
have made it up and said, "Oh, that's the new Volkswagen, that's the Kia, and that's the Lamborghini."
I said, "Which one of these would you guys pick?" All right, so we took a little vote there, and the winner was car number 3. And I said, car number 1 is a Porsche Panamera.
Okay.
Car number 2 is an M5 from BMW. And I saw I did that one. I saw
Saw the M?
M, so I was like, okay, that one I got. And the third one, which 3 people picked, which was the winner of the 6 people who picked. The winner car was a
Kia?
Sonata N. It was a Hyundai Sonata
Oh, yeah.
N line. And they
Wow.
couldn't believe their eyes.
They are
And it
definitely
looked-
up-end looking.
It looked like it belonged there by a lot. It was I would say it was the most attractive car in the 3. That's not the
Well,
one I would
other
pick if
people
I were
picked it
gonna-
that way, too.
Yeah, exactly. So no one could believe it was a Hyundai. Then that stuck in my mind.
I'm glad
That's
you,
awesome,
I'm
Chris.
glad you wrecked that. You rocked that.
I did, and I was like, listen, if you'd asked me 2 days ago, I wouldn't have known. I would have known what the first 2 were.
And you guys didn't have a car. You Ubered and did.
No, we were with a
big group?
parents group, so we
Okay.
I walked 37 miles while I was in New York. Yeah.
Wow.
Including one day we had on Thanksgiving after the parade, we were coming back for a dinner cruise for Thanksgiving. And I had set a timer on my phone for when to head back, because I was out walking and I knew, I gotta leave myself some time to get back to the hotel to change and go to dinner. And my alarm went off. I was in Central Park and I was like, my alarm went off. I should see where I am and how far I am. I'm 2.8 miles away from the hotel and I have 20 minutes to get there.
You had to pick up your pace a little
I
bit.
had to pick up my pace, and I barely made it. And I did not get all the things done I wanted to. But yeah, I was. Excuse me, enjoying the park. Bye. And then it was funny because I was like,
you were a bustling New Yorker.
I was hustling around people, and I was walking and looking, and then I'd go, "Oh man, it's getting late." I better stop here for a minute and take this in. I'm not going to be here any other
I've only
time.
seen this on TV.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. That was the 2 car notes I had. Otherwise, there were no cars in my trip hardly.
And just for people that hear things all the time, you felt safe where you were at and everything?
Not once. We were in Times Square. We stayed on Times Square. Broadway was where our hotel address was. We were blocked. It was like being at downtown Disney at all times. Everything was open. I mean, even late at night when we were coming back from somewhere or I went out, it was Everything was open. They were peep friendly. It was
Just don't walk
perfectly-
down an alley that's dark in the corner.
I remember I've been there before, and there were times where you didn't take shortcuts, you didn't cut through, and I never felt that. Of course, where we were, you could probably go out for blocks, and it was all, it was all theme park. We went to a New York theme park, basically, is where we stayed. It was fine. Somebody asked me, when I was out, I said, I went walking around. Were you ever nervous? And I said, no, I think I think I give off a pretty okay false vibe. I'm sturdy looking. I look crabby. I think I'm. No one even approached me with.
So you just walk around with an RBF?
And I think I just give off that vibe. It's not real because I'm actually thinking, oh, look at that. That guy has watches for sale. I should go ask him. Yeah. So anyway, all right.
Well, we've got an interview to do, so we'll get on with some production work that we've got to do. Thanks for tuning in today and enjoying the YouTube channel. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody. We just want them to know.
There we go. Thanks everybody for watching the Under the Hood Show.